This little boy had a hearing impairment, so he always had to wear a hearing aid in one ear. Because of this, he was constantly teased and ostracized by his peers. Only one boy, Si-hyun, would talk to him and even gave him his most prized marble just to wear the boy's hearing aid. From then on, the two boys became close friends and grew up together. Time flew by quickly, and by 1998, the two boys had become high school students. The boy who wore the hearing aid was now a shy and timid young man. He secretly liked a classmate but never dared to talk to her. Knowing his friend's feelings, Si-hyun tried to act as a bridge for his shy friend. Si-hyun took his friend In Jayu to the music store where the girl worked. When she saw the two boys enter, the girl just lowered her head in embarrassment. Si-hyun went into the store and searched for a tape by a very popular singer at the time. But upon checking, the girl, Min-ju, said that the tape was sold out and asked Si-hyun to leave his name and phone number. "When the tape comes in, I'll call you," Min-ju said. Si-hyun wanted to create an opportunity for his friend, so he asked In Jayu to leave his phone number instead. But the shy boy didn't understand the hint and refused. Si-hyun had to write down his own name and phone number and leave it. When the two boys walked out, the girl watched them, then smiled with amusement. The next morning, when he saw Min-ju miss the bus to school, Si-hyun gave her his helmet. Then he asked Min-ju to get on In Jayu's bike so that he could give her a ride to school. During chemistry lab, when the teacher asked them to choose 3 people to form a group for the experiment, Si-hyun proactively requested to be in a group with Min-ju and then arranged for In Jayu to sit at the same table with Min-ju and work together. He, meanwhile, secretly read a comic book disguised as a chemistry textbook. Although Si-hyun actively tried to set them up, the person Min-ju had secretly liked for a long time was actually the handsome Si-hyun. One day, while renting a movie to take home, Si-hyun saw Min-ju sitting and crying alone. He approached her and greeted her, then said, "If you tell me why you're crying, I'll tell you a secret of mine. That way, we'll both know each other's secrets." Min-ju said, "My parents are about to get divorced, but they're both fighting for custody of my younger brother. No one cares about me, they don't even remember my birthday, but my brother's birthday is celebrated with cake and presents. I feel so sad and neglected, that's why I'm crying." After hearing this, Si-hyun immediately told Min-ju his secret. He said, "At the end of this year, during winter break, I'm going to move to the United States. My family's restaurant business is failing, so we're all going to America to live with my grandfather. Don't tell In Jayu this secret, okay?" Min-ju asked. "Why?" Si-hyun replied. "If In Jayu knows, he'll be very sad. I'm good at making friends, so I'll be fine in America. But In Jayu is always shy and barely has any friends. Please be friends with In Jayu so he won't be lonely when I leave for America." Fast forward to 2023, there's a girl who bears a striking resemblance to Min-ju. However, this girl is someone else, named Han Jun-hee. Jun-hee is an extremely energetic, confident, and successful woman. Jun-hee had a very handsome boyfriend, but unfortunately, he died in a plane crash a year ago. Surprisingly, this boyfriend bears a striking resemblance to the high school student named Si-hyun from 1998. But Jun-hee's deceased boyfriend's name is Yeon-jun. Before his death, Yeon-jun and Jun-hee were a very happy couple, and they had planned a beautiful future together after many months of being deeply in love. One time, Jun-hee told her boyfriend, "I want to go to New York for a year to develop my career." Yeon-jun was incredibly saddened by this and said, "How about I put my work on hold for a year and go with you? I can't live without you for even a week, let alone a year." On the very day of her departure for the US, Jun-hee begged Yeon-jun not to throw everything away to follow her to America. Despite her offering many reasons to persuade him, Yeon-jun wouldn't listen and said, "The moments I get to spend close to you are the most important to me. What if after this trip, we'll be apart forever?" Thinking that Yeon-jun was being overly dramatic about her loyalty, Jun-hee walked off to the airport in a huff. And then Yeon-jun met with an accident while flying to New York to find her. Even though her boyfriend Yeon-jun had passed away, Jun-hee still regularly texted his phone number, hoping to receive a reply, as she still held on to the hope that he was alive since his body was never recovered after the accident. One day, while texting Yeon-jun, Jun-hee received a photo from a mysterious Instagram account. In the photo were 3 high school students, and one of them looked a lot like her boyfriend, Yeon-jun. Jun-hee tried to message the account, but she never received a response. The person who sent the photo to Jun-hee was a mysterious man with long hair. Jun-hee showed the picture to her close friend at work. Her friend immediately said, "The girl in the picture is you, isn't it?" Jun-hee replied, "It's not me. I've never taken this picture, and I've never worn my hair or clothes like that girl, and I don't know who the boy on the left is either." Jun-hee saw that the three people in the photo were taken in front of a store called Video Store 27. She immediately searched online and found out that the store had closed down a long time ago. The next morning, while working at the company, her close friend ran over and told Jun-hee, "I searched online and found out that Video Store 27 has changed its business model and become Cafe 27. The two girls then went to the cafe to ask about the photo, but the shop was now closed. Jun-hee then took the train home. When the train stopped, a young man with long hair and a cane got off. Jun-hee looked at him and thought he looked very much like her deceased boyfriend. She immediately climbed the stairs to go meet the long-haired man, but when she got there, he had disappeared. Jun-hee sadly walked away, but the man with the cane was still watching her from afar. Back in 1998, the evening Min-ju returned home from the video store. She met Si-hyun and In-jae holding a birthday cake and singing happy birthday to her. The two boys then gave Min-ju a birthday present, a new cassette player. Si-hyun asked Min-ju, "Are you no longer sad about what you said earlier today about your parents only remembering your brother's birthday?" In-jae realized that Si-hyun and Min-ju had been secretly meeting without him, so he got upset, stood up, and walked away. Si-hyun then drove Min-ju home. She sat behind him, hugging his waist and smiling. When they arrived at her house, Min-ju gave Si-hyun the tape he had been looking for earlier. Si-hyun opened the tape and saw that Min-ju had written a romantic message on the back. Min-ju then said, "I hope you'll be happy when you listen to it." Min-ju repeatedly thanked Si-hyun for organizing her birthday, but he insisted it was all In-jae's effort. Min-ju now lowered her head and said, "I'll try to become the kind of girl you like." Si-hyun immediately interrupted her, "I'll never like you." Min-ju was extremely saddened and asked, "Is it because In-jae likes me that you're rejecting me?" Si-hyun coldly replied, "I only see you as a friend, so don't show anything in front of In-jae." Then, Si-hyun drove off, leaving Min-ju sobbing because her confession had failed. Continuing back to 2023. One day, while working at the company, Jun-hee received a mysterious package. As she was about to open it, her close friend announced that Cafe 27 was open and invited Jun-hee to go there. So the two women made their way to the cafe. The cafe owner was surprised to see Jun-hee and asked, "Is that Min-ju?" Jun-hee showed him the photo and asked, "Is Min-ju the girl in this picture?" The cafe owner confirmed that he was the one who took the photo, that the person in the picture was his niece, Min-ju, and that the two boys in the picture were her high school classmates. When the two women asked, "Can we meet your niece, Min-ju?" the cafe owner told them that Min-ju had passed away in 1998. On their way back, Jun-hee's friend analyzed the situation for her. That photo was taken in 1998, when your boyfriend Yeon-jun was only in 4th grade. Since he was only 11 years old, the person in the picture couldn't possibly be Yeon-jun. Jun-hee teared up and said, "If that boy was Yeon-jun, and the girl in the picture was someone Yeon-jun used to like, it might help me forget him, because I still can't accept that he's gone forever." Back in 1998, after Si-hyun rejected her confession, Min-ju walked into her house and found her mother and younger brother gone. The furniture was tossed around. Min-ju immediately called her uncle and said, "I think my mother has taken my brother and left me." Her uncle replied, "I'll be right there." Min-ju then ran off to look for them and was hit by a speeding car. Back in 2023, Jun-hee boarded the bus to go home. She opened the package and found an old-fashioned cassette player and a tape. She read the sweet message written on the tape cover, then put on her headphones to listen to the music on the tape. She took out her phone and texted Yeon-jun, "I wish I could have seen you again, even just once, for my birthday. I miss you so much." Then, lulled by the soft, melodious music, Jun-hee gradually fell asleep. Suddenly, the message Jun-hee sent to her deceased boyfriend showed as "read." Then the cassette player fell to the floor. And now, memories of the girl Min-ju surfaced in Jun-hee's mind. Some supernatural force transported her to the hospital, and the person beside her was the high school student Si-hyun. He put headphones on Jun-hee and played the same music she had just been listening to on the bus. Jun-hee then woke up. She looked at Si-hyun and called out, "Yeon-jun," then hugged him tightly. She sobbed and said, "I miss you so much. I'm sorry we fought earlier." At that moment, In-jae arrived outside. When he saw his best friend enter the room, Si-hyun pushed Jun-hee away and said, "Min-ju, what are you doing?" Jun-hee was extremely puzzled as to why both boys were calling her Min-ju, then suddenly felt a sharp pain in her head. A jumble of memories, both hers and Min-ju's, suddenly flashed through her mind. Completely disoriented and unsure of where or who she was, she asked the boys, "What's the date today?" and learned that it was 1998, not 2023. Si-hyun and In-jae tried to ask Jun-hee about the accident last night. Jun-hee said, "Was I on the bus last night? No, wait, last night I was looking for my mother and brother. Suddenly a car sped towards me." She then asked, "Where's my mother?" When Si-hyun said, "She just left," Jun-hee became furious that her mother didn't care even when she was unconscious. She boldly asked to borrow some money from the two boys for a taxi home. And the real Min-ju was now in a dark room, and it turned out that she was inside Jun-hee's consciousness. Min-ju could now hear and see everything Jun-hee was experiencing. Arriving home, Jun-hee yelled at her mother, "Why didn't you take care of me when your daughter was unconscious in the hospital? Do you want to abandon me?" Then proceeded to slap her younger brother hard on the head and yell at him, shocking everyone. They were all very surprised because the usually gentle and timid Min-ju was now so fierce and assertive. Jun-hee then experienced a headache and asked Yeon-jun to take her back to the hospital. He replied, "My name is Si-hyun." The two boys then took Jun-hee back to the hospital. When the doctor examined her and asked questions to test her memory, she also identified herself as Min-ju and said she had been in a car accident the previous night. The doctor said, "Her condition isn't serious, but I think the mixed-up memories might be due to the shock from the accident." Si-hyun and In-jae excused themselves and left. Min-ju's uncle and mother then told her, "You weren't hit by a car. You were found unconscious with a bleeding head. The police said it looked like someone hit you with a blunt object." The two boys walked home, but In-jae was now sulking with Si-hyun. Seeing this, Si-hyun explained, "Min-ju hugged me earlier because she mistook me for someone else." In-jae said, "I'm not angry about what happened just now, but about what happened on Min-ju's birthday. I followed you and saw Min-ju confess to you. If you hadn't been so cold to her, she might have come to us for help, and she definitely wouldn't have been hurt like this." Si-hyun replied, "If I don't have feelings for her, should I pretend that I do?" In-jae then quietly walked away. Jun-hee was later discharged from the hospital and went home. Upon entering Min-ju's unfamiliar room, she found Min-ju's diary. Because she could partially remember Min-ju's memories, Jun-hee also found the key to unlock the diary and began to study it to understand Min-ju better. As she read, she found a dark, sorrowful mood in every page Min-ju wrote. She then learned that Min-ju had long admired Si-hyun and couldn't take her eyes off him in class. Just then, her mother came upstairs to announce that the police were there to see her about the recent attack. Jun-hee told the police, "I only remember being hit by a car. I don't remember anything about being attacked." The police officer said, "The place where you were found is very far from where you said you were hit by a car. Judging by the wound on your head, you were definitely hit by a blunt object." The officer gave her his number and asked Jun-hee to contact him immediately if she remembered anything else. Jun-hee went back to her room and found a box in Min-ju's backpack. When she opened it, she found a cassette player identical to the one she had listened to on the bus. Then she heard a noise outside the window. When she looked out, she saw Si-hyun standing there. He had brought fried chicken for her to eat and regain her strength. Si-hyun said, "I'm sorry I rejected you. Don't avoid me and In-jae. If you need anything, don't wander around alone like last night." Jun-hee replied, "You rejected me, so how can we still be friends? That's why they say you should never casually confess to a friend." Si-hyun looked directly into Jun-hee's eyes and asked, "Are you really Min-ju? If I had asked these questions before, you would have been embarrassed and lowered your head." Jun-hee explained, "I just reread my diary, and I feel a bit foolish for confessing. If you're going to confess, you should flirt for a long time, and only confess when you're sure it will work." Si-hyun asked Jun-hee, "Who is Yeonjun anyway?" she replied. "If I tell you, you'll think I'm crazy." Sihyun replied, "Just tell me. I already think you're not in your right mind anyway." Jun-hee recounted, "When I was in the hospital, I had a very long dream. In that dream, I wasn't Minju, but Jun-hee, and you were Yeonjun. I even dreamed that we met in college. We started living together after graduating. Because we didn't have money, we lived in a basement studio. Life was very happy, and we even promised to marry each other. But unfortunately, Yeonjun died in an accident." After hearing the story, Sihyun started looking at Jun-hee intensely and said, "Do you like me so much that you dream those kinds of dreams?" Upon hearing this, Jun-hee walked away and said, "I like Yeonjun in the dream, not you, Sihyun. Please forget what I said and the confession before." Sihyun said, "Are you embarrassed because I rejected you, so you made up that dream to save face?" Frustrated, Jun-hee walked away. Sihyun went home, sensing that Minju had changed almost 180 degrees. He played the song on the tape Minju had given him, reminiscing about the dream story she had just told him. The next day, sitting in class, Sihyun kept thinking about the dream Minju had described, even writing down the name Yeonjun from the dream. After school, both boys went to Minju's house to check on her. Jun-hee was now becoming accustomed to being Minju in 1998. Sihyun invited In Jae-woo and Jun-hee to the scene of the incident to investigate. Jun-hee again described the memory she had, insisting that she had been hit by a car. The three of them went to the place where Jun-hee had been found unconscious. The two boys wondered why Minju had been found so far from where she was supposedly hit. Who had attacked Minju? Jun-hee tried hard, but couldn't remember anything and continued to call Sihyun Yeonjun. Sihyun said, "Why do you keep mistaking me for your boyfriend in the dream?" In Jae-woo, overhearing this, became suspicious and asked Sihyun, "Is there something I don't know?" Sihyun told In Jae-woo, "Go ask Minju. It's all very confusing." In Jae-woo then took Jun-hee home alone. He hesitated, then asked, "Can you tell me more about the dream you mentioned earlier?" Jun-hee then told In Jae-woo the love story in her dream between herself and the person who looked just like Sihyun. After listening, In Jae-woo asked, "So the person you like is Yeonjun in the dream, not Sihyun in real life, right? If so, then I have a chance. To be honest, I really like you. At school, when I saw you alone on the rooftop, I could read your lips, so I understood everything you said. You and I are very similar, both lonely and seen as oddballs in class. I've always had my eye on you. When I knew you liked Sihyun, I wanted to give up. But when you were hurt, I realized that if I didn't confess to you, I would definitely regret it. You don't have to answer me right away. I just want you to know that you're very important to me." Jun-hee just nodded. Jun-hee went home and wrote in the diary. She thought that the person who should accept In Jae-woo's confession was Minju, not her. So, Jun-hee didn't know how to respond. She was gradually getting used to life in 1998 in Minju's body. The real Minju, inside Jun-hee's consciousness, also saw everything that was happening. That day, the two boys came to the video store where Jun-hee was working to hang out. Sihyun then picked up her uncle's expensive camera. Jun-hee tried to stop him. "You can't mess with my uncle's camera." Her uncle came home and scolded Sihyun. Afterwards, he took a picture of the three of them in front of Video Store 27, which was the same picture Jun-hee had seen in 2023. Jun-hee now felt that she was gradually integrating into Minju's life, and she also felt that Sihyun was very similar to her boyfriend Yeonjun, even though she knew it couldn't be him. As for Sihyun, he was starting to feel a little flutter of attraction to the new Minju. He looked at Jun-hee's handwriting on the back of the photo and smiled. One day, while Jun-hee was sleeping at the video store, her uncle came in and woke her up. Then, two police officers entered, looking for Jun-hee. They said they had found a hearing aid at the scene where she had been found unconscious. Jun-hee, remembering Minju's memories, realized that In Jae-woo also wore a similar hearing aid. Then, Jun-hee suddenly remembered that on the night of the incident, Minju had a confrontation with a male student and he hit her on the head. At that moment, Jun-hee woke up on the bus where she had fallen asleep earlier. She asked the bus driver to confirm that it was indeed 2023. Jun-hee then went home in a daze, thinking that everything that had just happened was just a dream. And a man with a cane, whose face strongly resembled her deceased boyfriend, was quietly watching her. Back home, Jun-hee looked at the messages she had sent to Yeon-jun and was surprised to see that they now showed as read. She immediately called the phone number Yeon-jun had used before he died, and someone actually answered. The person who answered used company software to track the SIM card's location. They discovered the person using the SIM card was at Cafe 27, and the billing history on the phone was under the name Si-hyun. The two women then went to Cafe 27 to investigate. The employee said, "The owner is out of town. I don't know when he'll be back." Jun-hee decided to wait to see the owner. She asked the employee, "Is there a customer or employee here named Si-hyun?" The employee replied, "That's the first time I've heard that name." The two women waited, but the owner didn't return. Jun-hee's friend told her, "I have to go soon." Jun-hee continued to wait until the cafe closed. She left her phone number and asked the employee to tell the owner to call her. Jun-hee then left. The long-haired man quietly watched her. Inside the cafe, the employee said to the long-haired man, "I told the girl I didn't know anyone named Si-hyun." Jun-hee went to the art studio where Yeon-jun had worked and met his friend, Chan-young. Jun-hee told him, "I had a strange dream. I saw a high school student who looked exactly like Yeon-jun. I even thought the dream was real." Chan-young replied, "Maybe you're severely sleep-deprived, so when you finally sleep, you have these strange dreams." Jun-hee then went to see a psychiatrist. The doctor told her, "Perhaps because you miss your deceased boyfriend so much, you're bringing those memories into your dreams." As Jun-hee was leaving, she received a call from the owner of Cafe 27. She went to the cafe to meet him. She told him, "I'm trying to find the person who is using my deceased boyfriend's phone number. I found out that the person's name is Si-hyun, and the last location the phone was turned on was at this cafe." Jun-hee told him, "I had a strange dream, and in the dream, I became your niece, Min-ju." The owner replied, "When Min-ju was alive, she also told me that she wasn't Min-ju, but Han Jun-hee. I thought she was just imagining things. But a few days ago, when you came to this cafe, I was surprised that you looked so much like Min-ju and that your name was also Han Jun-hee. So I prepared this for you." Jun-hee took the paper bag the cafe owner gave her and went home. When she opened it, she found Min-ju's diary, the same one she had seen in her dream. When she opened it, she saw the same words she had written in the dream, not missing a single word. Jun-hee continued to look through the diary and found a page at the back that said, "He is Yeon-jun." Jun-hee remembered the boy Si-hyun from 1998 and said, "I have to go back to that year to see Yeon-jun again." She hurriedly searched for the cassette player and tape, then played the music. She closed her eyes and returned to the exact moment she had left, just a few minutes earlier. Han Jun-hee woke up at Video Store 27 and asked her uncle, "Are the police here yet?" Then, the two police officers actually arrived. Jun-hee asked, "Are you here to show me a picture of the hearing aid that was dropped at the scene?" The police were taken aback. Realizing that what was happening wasn't a dream but reality, and that she was in Min-ju's body in 1998, Jun-hee immediately ran to the school to find Si-hyun. She ran around the school but couldn't find him, then went to the library and found him there. Seeing Si-hyun, Jun-hee teared up. Si-hyun was surprised to see her crying. He then showed off some super cute pictures of female idol singers and said, "I'm going to choose a girlfriend who looks like one of these singers." Jun-hee, feeling a pang of jealousy, walked out. Jun-hee ran outside and calculated Si-hyun and Yeon-jun's ages, realizing that Si-hyun couldn't possibly be the same age as her boyfriend Yeon-jun in 2023. Si-hyun ran after her and asked, "Why were you crying just now?" She replied, "I can cry if I want to. What's it to you?" Jun-hee immediately returned to the video store and checked Min-ju's diary. But the words, "He is Yeon-jun," were gone. She wondered when those words would appear. After recalculating, she realized that her boyfriend, Sun Yeon-jun, was only 11 years old. Jun-hee was extremely confused, unsure what to do with an 11-year-old boy. Si-hyun went to In-jayu's grandmother's snack shop to help out. He then suggested to In-jayu, "Let's go see Min-ju. She ran to find me this morning, but it seemed like she was crying. I want to see if she's okay." In-jayu replied, "I want to go see Min-ju alone, because I want to be the person she turns to when she's having a hard time." I confessed my feelings to Min-ju, but I stopped her from answering. "I'll wait until she forgets you and likes me." You said you wanted me and Minju to be happy, right? So from now on, stay away from Minju. In-jae then went to the video store to take Jun-hee home. He asked, "Are you upset about something today? If you have any problems, tell me." Jun-hee said, "I'm fine." Si-hyun went to play basketball, annoyed that In-jae had put him in a situation where he couldn't refuse his request. Then Jake, possibly another character, wondered, "Why was Minju crying, making me worry?" Jun-hee went home and thought to herself, "If Yeon-jun isn't here, what am I doing here? I have to work, but how do I get back to 2023? So Jun-hee decided to listen to music all night. When she woke up, she was still in 1998 and late for school. Her mother asked her why she hadn't gone to school. Jun-hee snapped, "Leave me alone," her mother said sadly. "You've never yelled at me like that before." Jun-hee apologized and said, "Tomorrow I'll go back to being your good, obedient daughter." Si-hyun arrived at school and asked a classmate, "Hasn't Minju arrived yet?" In-jae, seeing Si-hyun still concerned about Minju, was irritated. Then, they both went out to play basketball. In-jae, still sulking, refused to pass the ball to Si-hyun. Si-hyun decided to retaliate. The two boys started shoving and arguing with each other. After school, In-jae chased after Si-hyun and asked, "Are you going to see Minju?" Si-hyun replied, "Yes, and I don't want to waste words with someone who abandons his friend for a girl. From now on, I'll do what I want." In-jae turned around and saw two police officers waiting for him at his house. Jun-hee continued listening to music, hoping to return to 2023. But when she opened her eyes, she was still stuck there. Jun-hee felt very sleepy because she hadn't slept at all the previous night. Just as she lay down in bed, she heard a noise outside the window. When she opened the window, she saw Si-hyun waiting outside. He led her to a romantic spot to talk, despite her constant complaints about being sleepy. Si-hyun took Jun-hee to a beautiful grassy area, and they sat under a tree. Si-hyun asked, "Why were you crying yesterday?" Jun-hee was exasperated and asked, "You dragged me all the way here just to ask me that?" Si-hyun said, "I have something important to say, or I'll explode. At first, I wanted to be friends with you because In-jae liked you. I tried to help him, but after we became close, I felt confused. Now we should go back to the way things were. I'll consider you In-jae's friend. If things are clear like that, you and In-jae will be more comfortable together." While he was talking, Jun-hee had fallen asleep. Si-hyun lay down and looked at her sleeping face, saying, "When I saw you cry, my chest ached somewhere. When you hugged me and cried at the hospital, I wanted to cry too. Now, no matter what I do, I keep thinking about you crying. I'm going crazy." Si-hyun then stroked Jun-hee's hair and fell asleep as well. Jun-hee woke up and asked herself, "Why do you have the same face, voice, and even sleeping habits as Yeon-jun?" Si-hyun woke up, and they both gazed at each other. Embarrassed, they both sat up. Jun-hee asked Si-hyun, "What were you thinking about?" He replied, "It's late now, I'll tell you next time." They then walked home together. In-jae was called to the police station for questioning. His father was also there. The police asked In-jae, "What were you doing the night Minju was attacked?" In-jae said, "Si-hyun and I went to the video store to celebrate Vince's birthday. Then I went home alone." The police officer looked at In-jae and said, "Are you forgetting something? That night, the security camera recorded you walking towards Minju's house. Why were you following Minju?" In-jae remembered that night. He had gone to Minju's house to witness her confession to Si-hyun. The police officer showed him the hearing aid found at the scene and said, "The police traced the serial number and found out it's yours. This evidence is enough to put you on the suspect list." Minju's uncle went to her house and asked, "Why have you been skipping school and not helping me at the video store lately?" Jun-hee said, "I have some things to take care of." Seeing her uncle's continued puzzlement at her changed behavior, Jun-hee took out some money, gave it to her younger brother, and said, "Go buy some ice cream." Jun-hee then began to tell her uncle her secret. After listening, her uncle, completely bewildered, tried to summarize. "You're saying you're not Kwon Minju, but Han Jun-hee from 2023? And a guy in the future gave you a diary so you could come back to 1998 and change fate so Minju wouldn't die. He knows what to do to help you, so we should go to the hospital right away. You're starting to talk nonsense because of your head injury?" Jun-hee tried to convince Minju's uncle, but to no avail. The next morning, when In-jae arrived at school, the boys in his class started teasing him. They said, "Did you try something with Min-ju, but she resisted, so you hit her on the head?" Si-hyun arrived at class and saw his friend being teased. He warned the ringleader, but the boy retorted, "Don't you know In-jae tried to kill Min-ju? He was taken to the police station yesterday for questioning. There's even evidence that he tried to kill her." The ringleader asked Si-hyun, "Or did you do it and make In-jae take the blame for you?" Si-hyun grabbed the boy by the collar. When the homeroom teacher appeared, Si-hyun let go. The teacher then called In-jae to the counseling room. In the room, the homeroom teacher and the principal asked In-jae to stay away from school for a while. "It seems the reporters have heard the news. If they get wind of it, they'll come to our school, take pictures, and interview you. So it's best you stay home for a while and wait for things to calm down." Si-hyun immediately ran to Jun-hee's house. Seeing her come out, he took her hand and ran, leaving her mother stunned. Si-hyun took Jun-hee to see In-jae. In-jae said to Jun-hee, "It wasn't me. I lost my hearing aid. Don't you even believe me?" Jun-hee then took In-jae's hand and led him to the police station. She insisted to the police, "The person who hit me on the head that night wasn't In-jae. I dropped the hearing aid at the scene that night. Si-hyun and In-jae came to celebrate my birthday. He dropped his hearing aid, I picked it up, and kept it to return to him." The police officer asked In-jae, "Then why did you follow Min-ju and Si-hyun back to Min-ju's house that night?" Jun-hee interrupted, "He was probably asking if I'd seen his hearing aid, right?" She signaled for In-jae to agree, and he did. The police removed In-jae from the suspect list. The three celebrated with black bean noodles. In-jae thanked Jun-hee for lying for him. She said, "Thanks Si-hyun. He came to my house and asked me to help you." The two boys reconciled, and the three chatted happily. When the noodles arrived, Si-hyun said, "2 spoons of chili powder, 1 spoon of vinegar, that's how you make perfect black bean noodles." Jun-hee remembered eating black bean noodles with Yeon-jun, who used the exact same proportions. Stunned, she then tried to tell a joke to distract them. Her first joke fell flat. Her second got a chuckle from In-jae, but Si-hyun found it lame. At home, Jun-hee realized Yeon-jun had told her those same jokes. He had found them hilarious, she hadn't. At home, Si-hyun remembered Jun-hee's jokes and laughed, wondering, "Why am I laughing at those stupid jokes?" He couldn't stop thinking about her. Min-ju's uncle took Jun-hee to the park and asked, "If you're Han Jun-hee from 2023, where is my Min-ju?" Jun-hee became lost in thought. Min-ju, inside Jun-hee's consciousness, yelled, "Uncle, it's me. I'm here." Jun-hee felt like someone had called her. She told her uncle, "I'm sorry, I don't know where Min-ju is. But if you help me get back to 2023, I'll give you a gift. I was a good student, so I'll help Min-ju get good grades. When she returns, she can get into a good university." Hearing his niece promise to study hard and not skip school made her uncle overjoyed. He said, "I don't know if you're Jun-hee or Min-ju, but if you study hard, I'll trust you this time." On a math practice test, Jun-hee tried her best, but being bad at math, she didn't do well. Afterwards, 2 girls invited her to join the girls' basketball team. They were surprised, as Min-ju had never participated in school activities before. Jun-hee readily agreed, declaring, "I'll play well, I love basketball." Si-hyun and In-jae played soccer with friends, cheered on by the girls. During a break, Da-hyun offered Si-hyun water and asked, "Are you doing anything tomorrow?" Suddenly, the boys ran off. Si-hyun learned that Min-ju was carrying her team in a basketball game. He returned Da-hyun's water and went with In-jae to watch. They watched Min-ju score repeatedly, wondering, since when does she play basketball? She always faked illness to skip pee. As some boys cheered loudly for Min-ju, Si-hyun stepped in front of them and clapped even louder, making Da-hyun jealous. Jun-hee made the winning shot. A mysterious boy watched the game. After the game, the 2 boys approached Jun-hee. Si-hyun asked, "Are you really Min-ju? You've changed completely. Do you have a split personality?" In-jae agreed, "You've changed so much." Jun-hee stood up. After a moment of thought, she said, "I want to change so the culprit will notice me. I want to lure him out again. Because I used to be shy and timid, he'll think I won't report anything. But if he knows I'm stronger, he'll be scared and try to silence me." Si-hyun said, That's too dangerous. The culprit can't watch you 24/7. Jun-hee sat down and said, I remember the culprit is from this school. He was wearing our uniform. The two boys became even more worried about their friend. The photos from the basketball game were developed. The class crowded around to get theirs. A mysterious student quietly took a picture of Jun-hee. Jun-hee was now popular and attracting attention from boys. One boy approached her and said, Min-ju, I loved watching you play basketball, and offered her a juice box. Si-hyun watched from afar, then walked over, snatched the juice, and drank it himself. He said, What if he's the culprit? You have to be careful. Jun-hee replied, It's not him. His face doesn't look like the culprit's. Despite Jun-hee saying she wasn't interested in the boy, Si-hyun was clearly jealous. Si-hyun went to In-jayu's grandmother's snack shop. A little girl wanted tteokbokki, but her grandmother refused to buy it for her. Si-hyun borrowed money and bought the girl some, asking her to keep it a secret. The next day, Jun-hee arrived at school to see the practice test scores posted. She found Min-ju's name at 131st place. In-jayu was first, and Si-hyun was fifth. Jun-hee was surprised they were so smart. Her friend said, In-jayu is a known nerd, but Si-hyun just plays around. How did he get such a high score? Jun-hee approached Si-hyun to say something, but then changed her mind. She then asked In-jayu, I'm really bad at math. Can you tutor me? He readily agreed. Si-hyun was annoyed she hadn't asked him. Then, Jun-hee accidentally mentioned Si-hyun's winter break plans, even though he had specifically asked her not to tell In-jayu about his move to America. Si-hyun quickly covered it up. Realizing her mistake, Jun-hee excused herself. Si-hyun walked home. He saw two older boys cutting in line for an arcade game ahead of two little girls. When the girls protested, the boys said, Leave before I stop being nice. Si-hyun sat down at the game and said, Take your turn before I stop being nice. The boys fled. Si-hyun played games with the little girl he had bought tteokbokki for earlier. As he left, she said, My name is Han Jun-hee. Remember my name. At Min-ju's house, her mother scolded her son for his terrible report card. When Jun-hee arrived, her mother asked, Where's your report card? Seeing her daughter's grades, her mother was shocked. Jun-hee braced herself for a scolding, but her mother said, Wow, Min-ju, you did so well. You went up 100 places since your injury. Jun-hee was surprised, muttering, Min-ju is really bad at studying. Proud of her daughter, her mother hugged both children and promised, I'll work hard so you can get a good education. Her mother then gave Jun-hee some spending money as a reward. Jun-hee went to her room and opened the window. Outside, a boy from her school was secretly watching her, and his face was revealed. The next day, Jun-hee woke up late and missed the bus. Seeing Si-hyun riding by, she hopped on his bike for a ride. When he pretended to refuse, she used force to get her way. Si-hyun was flustered when she put her arm around his shoulder. After riding for a while, Jun-hee put her arms around his waist. After school, Si-hyun invited In-jayu to play basketball, but Jun-hee reminded them. It's In-jayu's tutoring time, Si-hyun said. I can wait for you guys. As they walked to the study room, Si-hyun said he forgot his bike key and went back to get it. He bumped into a classmate, dropping the boys' things. Picking them up, Si-hyun saw a beautiful drawing of a black butterfly. He realized this was the boy who had taken Jun-hee's picture from the basketball game. Si-hyun waited for In-jayu and Jun-hee to finish studying so they could play basketball. But he got bored and left. He felt a pang of sadness as he walked away. Inside, In-jayu saw a cat outside the window. He remembered walking home from school with Min-ju and seeing a stray cat. Min-ju had fed it, saying she often did but was afraid to name it in case she got attached. In-jayu called Jun-hee over to see the cat. She said, So cute. But when he suggested they go outside to feed it, she said she was a little afraid of cats. After studying, they walked home. While Jun-hee chattered, In-jayu was silent and sad. When Jun-hee asked, Did I do something to upset you today? In-jayu replied, No, nothing. He then said, If they invited only you, you should go with them. Si-hyun went behind the school and thought, Could Min-ju be trying to confess to me? He told himself, If she does, I have to think of In-jayu and reject her immediately. In-jayu, curious, followed Si-hyun and saw him talking to a girl. Jun-hee arrived and tapped In-jayu on the shoulder. He was relieved to see that she wasn't the one who had sent Si-hyun a note. It was Da-hyun. She told Si-hyun, "I've liked you for a long time. Let's date. I think we're on the same level." Si-hyun flatly replied, "I don't want to date you. I'm waiting for my soulmate. I'll only be with one person my whole life, and it's not you." Jun-hee was surprised by his answer. Da-hyun stormed off angrily. Back at the video store, Jun-hee remembered her friend telling her a story about Yeon-jun rejecting a girl's confession in college. He had used the same words, "I'm waiting for my soulmate, and it's not you." Jun-hee found another striking similarity between Si-hyun and Yeon-jun. The next morning at school, Jun-hee found many pictures of herself under her desk. She looked around nervously, then showed the pictures to Si-hyun and In-jae. They said, "The culprit must have been watching you for a long time. He could attack you anytime," Jun-hee said. "These were taken when I was walking home from school. Tomorrow, we'll ask around my neighborhood to see if anyone saw a boy in our uniform with a camera." In-jae reminded her, "We have the school art competition tomorrow." The next day, the class went to a field for an outdoor art lesson. Si-hyun looked for Jun-hee but saw her happily painting with In-jae, so he walked away sadly. Si-hyun lay in the grass, reminiscing about Jun-hee, then told himself, "Stop thinking about her." As he drank some water, Jun-hee approached and asked, "Aren't you painting?" He replied, "I finished in 10 minutes." She noticed grass in his hair and brushed it away. They gazed at each other. Suddenly, it started raining. Jun-hee ran ahead. Si-hyun followed. He found the image of her running in the rain beautiful and smiled as he chased after her. On the bus ride back, In-jae looked sad. He had seen Jun-hee and Si-hyun gazing at each other. As they walked back to the video store, Jun-hee chattered, while the two boys were quiet. Her uncle came out and asked, "Are you sure neither of you is dating Min-ju?" Si-hyun replied, "We just walked her home." They said goodbye and left. As they walked away, Si-hyun turned to In-jae and said, "You said I cared too much about Min-ju, right?" "Yes, I do care about her a lot. Because I like her." In-jae replied, "So? Are you going to confess and date her?" Si-hyun answered, "No. I just wanted to be honest with you." In-jae pressed, "Are you afraid to confess because you don't want to hurt me?" Si-hyun said, "It's not because of you. At the end of the year, during winter break, I'm moving to America with my family. Confessing would just make things awkward." In-jae said, "Then you should be cold to her, not give her false hope. What will happen to her when you leave?" At home, Si-hyun's mother gave him a list of American high schools. He asked, "Can't I stay here?" His mother asked. "What's wrong?" He said, "Nothing," and went to his room. He remembered Jun-hee running in the rain and started painting the image. The next day at school, as the girls changed for P, Da-hyun secretly took pictures of Jun-hee. After class, Jun-hee invited Si-hyun to investigate the photographer with her and In-jae. He said he was busy. Jun-hee followed him and asked, "Are you two fighting again?" He told her to ask In-jae. During tutoring, Jun-hee asked In-jae the same question. He asked her, "Min-ju, do you still like Si-hyun? Even if he said he liked you, you'd still just be friends, right?" Suddenly, Si-hyun appeared and yelled, "Didn't I explain everything last night?" In-jae retorted, "Shouldn't Min-ju know you're moving to America?" He looked at their faces and asked Jun-hee. "Did you know?" she said. "I just found out." In-jae, upset, walked away. That evening, Jun-hee saw Si-hyun sitting alone on her way home. She tried to slip past, but he stopped her. He said, "Don't worry about what In-jae said. I'll handle it." Jun-hee scolded him. "If you told In-jae sooner, things wouldn't be so messed up. Now he's mad at me too." Si-hyun said, "Is that all you care about? Fine, I'm sorry, okay? Sorry for not telling In-jae. Sorry for liking you." They both froze. Si-hyun continued, "It's my fault, I'll fix it," and walked away. He then ran back and said, "I haven't told you what I wanted to say. I really like you, Min-ju. I pretended not to like you. But no matter how hard I try, the feeling doesn't go away." Jun-hee chuckled and said, "You've made a mistake. You'll regret it tomorrow." Si-hyun insisted, "I won't regret it. My feelings for you are more than friendship." The real Min-ju, inside Jun-hee's consciousness, felt a flutter hearing Si-hyun confess. The next day at school, Jun-hee avoided Si-hyun. He noticed. After school, In-jae invited Jun-hee to look for the photographer. They visited shops along Jun-hee's route home, asking about a boy in a school uniform with a camera, but found no leads. In Jae-yu then said, "If you like Si-hyun, just date him. He won't be here long. Don't stay with me out of pity." Jun-hee replied, "I'm not with you out of pity. You and Si-hyun are both good friends. I don't understand why I confess to Si-hyun." In Jae-yu said, "Honestly, I liked the old Min-ju better. Aren't you trying to change to be Si-hyun's type?" As In Jae-yu walked away, Jun-hee called after him, "I have something to tell both of you." Si-hyun joined Jun-hee and In Jae-yu. Jun-hee told them everything. "Remember the dream I told you about? In the dream, I was Han Jun-hee, not Kwon Min-ju. That wasn't a dream, it was real. I'm Han Jun-hee from 2023. I'm not the Min-ju you like, so there's no reason for you to fight over me, understand?" She showed them Min-ju's notebook. "This handwriting is Min-ju's, this is mine. They're completely different." Si-hyun asked, "How did you get to 1998? Jun-hee explained about the cassette tape and falling asleep on the anniversary of her boyfriend's death. Si-hyun said, "So you're Jun-hee in Min-ju's body. I understand. For the record, I'm not Si-hyun either. I'm a Terminator sent from the distant future to kill Han Jun-hee." Realizing he was joking, Jun-hee slammed her hand on the table and said, "I'm serious, you have to believe me. If we don't catch the culprit soon, Min-ju will be killed. In 2023, I heard that on October 13th, 1998, Min-ju was murdered." Seeing their skeptical looks, she grabbed her bag and left. Si-hyun said, "I get it. You're doing this so In Jae-yu and I will make up, right?" Exasperated, Jun-hee walked away. Si-hyun and In Jae-yu went out to eat. They both admitted, what Min-ju said was crazy, but she is different. In Jae-yu said, "My heart doesn't race around her anymore. When you said you liked her, I wasn't that angry." Si-hyun replied, "So you weren't mad at me? I felt so bad. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about moving to America." The two boys laughed and talked happily. That night, Da-hyun and two friends went to the classroom and taped the pictures of Jun-hee changing onto the blackboard. Da-hyun had sent Jun-hee the pictures to scare her away from Si-hyun. Afterward, the three girls left, but Da-hyun's friends went to the restroom, leaving her alone. A stranger appeared and covered her mouth. When her friends returned, Da-hyun was gone. A mysterious boy was holding her captive inside the classroom. The next morning, a female student entered the classroom and found Da-hyun slumped over her desk. She called out to her, but Da-hyun didn't respond. Then, the student noticed Da-hyun was covered in blood. Jun-hee arrived at the classroom to find the police already there. She learned that Da-hyun had been murdered. Jun-hee noticed Da-hyun's two close friends acting strangely and decided to follow them. The two girls were terrified, believing Min-ju had killed Da-hyun in revenge, as the photos on the bulletin board had also disappeared. Overhearing this, Jun-hee ran to confront them. Nam Si-hyun arrived at school and heard that a female student had been murdered in his class. He rushed to the classroom, wherein Jae-yu told him, "It wasn't Min-ju, it was Da-hyun." Just then, Jun-hee arrived and pulled the two boys aside to talk. The three of them went to Nam Si-hyun's house. Jun-hee explained, "Da-hyun was the one who sent me those photos. She wanted to warn me to stay away from Nam Si-hyun. She also took pictures of me changing in the classroom. Last night, the three of them posted dozens of photos in the classroom, but I don't understand why the culprit took down my pictures. I wonder if this person is the same one who attacked me before." In Jae-yu had to leave due to a prior engagement. Nam Si-hyun walked him out. Outside, In Jae-yu said to Nam Si-hyun, "If I were the culprit, I would only allow myself to harass Min-ju, and I wouldn't let anyone hurt her, but I'm just hypothesizing." Nam Si-hyun looked surprised and replied, "Are you trying to scare me? How can someone want to harm someone and protect them at the same time?" In Jae-yu left. Nam Si-hyun returned to his room to talk with Jun-hee. When he called her Han Jun-hee, she froze and asked, "Do you believe I'm really Jun-hee?" Nam Si-hyun replied, "I do. You're Han Jun-hee from 2023, because the story you told is partially true. Your eyes have changed a lot compared to before. I'm also very curious about what kind of person the Han Jun-hee I like is." Jun-hee looked bewildered and asked, "Did you just say you like me?" Nam Si-hyun smiled and gazed at Jun-hee. Then, he bashfully excused himself to get her a drink. Jun-hee thought to herself, I can't fall for Nam Si-hyun. Later, Jun-hee looked through Nam Si-hyun's sketchbook and saw a drawing of a girl running in the rain. She remembered seeing this drawing in her boyfriend's art studio, and that Do-yeon had also painted it. Tears welled up in Jun-hee's eyes as she said to Nam Si-hyun, "You are my Yeon-jun." Suddenly, Jun-hee woke up in 2023. Her friend had come to her house because Jun-hee wasn't answering her calls. Remembering what had just happened, Jun-hee immediately ran to Cafe 27. She asked the cafe owner, "Is Nam Si-hyun actually Do-yeon-jun? Did Yeon-jun enter Nam Si-hyun's body just like I entered Min-ju's body in 1998? Suddenly, a long-haired man with a cane walked out and said, "I'll tell you everything." Seeing him, Jun-hee burst into tears and asked, "Are you Nam Si-hyun or Yeon-jun?" The long-haired man also started to cry and began to tell Jun-hee the whole story. The story flashed back to 2022. After 4 years of living in the US, Nam Si-hyun returned to South Korea to visit family and friends. His first stop was the prison to visit his friend In Jae-yu. But upon learning of his visit, In Jae-yu refused to see him and told him not to come again. Nam Si-hyun sat at a bus stop. He then boarded a deserted bus. It was pouring rain outside. He took out the cassette tape Min-ju had given him and played his favorite song. Memories of Jun-hee in Min-ju's body from 1998 flooded back. Nam Si-hyun started to drift off to sleep. The bus was going downhill when the driver lost control on the slick road. A car crashed into the bus, sending it plummeting into a ravine, rolling over and over. Nam Si-hyun was unconscious, covered in blood. But the cassette player continued to play the music. Later, a young man was rushed to the hospital after a car accident. He was thought to be gone, but miraculously, his heart started beating again. This young man's body was Yeon-jun's, but Nam Si-hyun's consciousness now inhabited it. When Nam Si-hyun woke up, he saw 2 unfamiliar women who both called him Yeon-jun. He suddenly remembered Min-ju calling out Yeon-jun's name and hugging him when she woke up in the hospital. He looked at his hospital bracelet and saw the name Koo Yeon-jun. He asked his mother and learned that the year was 2007, although he had been in 2002 before the accident. Nam Si-hyun remembered the time travel story Jun-hee had told him. The doctor concluded that Yeon-jun had only suffered minor shock from the accident. Yeon-jun's older sister began to recount the car accident to Nam Si-hyun. She said, "You were in a car accident while traveling with your friend T-ha." Nam Si-hyun asked, "Who is T-ha? I was clearly on a bus." His sister replied, "T-ha died at the scene, and you were unconscious for a week." Before Nam Si-hyun inhabited his body, Yeon-jun had a romantic relationship. He was studying for the university entrance exam. In the cram school, Yeon-jun always tried to save a seat for T-ha so they could sit together. On the rooftop one day, Yeon-jun wanted to tell T-ha something but was too shy to confess. T-ha said, "There's a cram school near my house, but I still come here. It takes me 3 hours to travel back and forth, all because I want to study with you." That day, T-ha drove to pick up Yeon-jun. They traveled to a distant place, planning to stay overnight. Their hands accidentally touched, and they both became flustered. Then, Yeon-jun took T-ha's hand. They gazed at each other so intently that T-ha forgot he was driving and crashed head-on into an oncoming car. Their car flipped over. T-ha died instantly, and Yeon-jun's body became Nam Si-hyun's. The fact that Nam Si-hyun didn't remember T-ha indicated that Yeon-jun's consciousness no longer existed. Only Nam Si-hyun remained in Yeon-jun's body. In the hospital room, Nam Si-hyun recalled the moment Min-ju died in Jae-yu's arms. Jae-yu had confessed to Nam Si-hyun that he had killed her. Although Nam Si-hyun was taken home to adjust to his new life as Yeon-jun in 27, he decided to visit the 27 record store. There, he met Min-ju's uncle. Nam Si-hyun told him about inhabiting Yeon-jun's body. The uncle believed him, as Min-ju had told him a similar story. The uncle explained that after Min-ju's death, his family fell apart for a while. Now, no one listened to records anymore, so he planned to move to Seoul and open a coffee shop. Jun-hee suggested this to me before. She told me to learn how to make coffee to compete in these tough times. If I had listened to her back then, the tragedy with Minju wouldn't have happened. Nam Si-hyun asked his uncle, "Since my bus accident in 2002, have you heard any news about me?" His uncle replied, "I only knew you were seriously injured, nothing more." Nam Si-hyun then visited his old high school. He reminisced about the good times he had shared with Jun-hee and In Jae-woo. Nam Si-hyun then searched a blog site for women named Han Jun-hee born in 1988. He found the Han Jun-hee of 2007. He went to her university to find her, but waited at the gate for a long time without seeing her. Later, he went to a convenience store to eat ramen. A girl came in and sat next to him. When he looked over, it was the Han Jun-hee he was looking for. They looked at each other, both shy and embarrassed. Jun-hee then received a phone call and quickly left. Nam Si-hyun followed her. Back at home, he started to redraw the picture of Jun-hee running in the rain, this time adding color. He took out his ID card with the name Koo Yeon-jun and decided to use Yeon-jun's identity to win Jun-hee over. He decided to move to Seoul to prepare for the university entrance exam. He went to Cafe 27 and told Minju's uncle, "I will study to get into the fine arts program at Jun-hee's university. She told me she met Yeon-jun when they were at the same university. I will become the Yeon-jun she described, and I will change what happened on October 13, 1998. The uncle gave Si-hyun a box of Minju's belongings. Si-hyun looked at a photo of the three of them together and sobbed. Si-hyun then diligently studied for the entrance exam. He was incredibly nervous when checking the results. He went to Cafe 27 to work and told his uncle, "I got accepted into Jun-hee's university." Nam Si-hyun entered the university as a freshman. As he walked across the bridge to the campus, he ran into Jun-hee. Seeing her smile, he became flustered and overwhelmed with emotion. He decided to follow her. He saw her enter a booth recruiting volunteers for a university club. Jun-hee invited him to join her volunteer club. They introduced themselves. Jun-hee was his senior, being a year older and in a higher grade. When Jun-hee asked, "What's your name?" Nam Si-hyun replied, "I'm Koo Yeon-jun." He took the club flyer and a piece of candy she offered and started to walk away. Then he turned back and said, "I like you, Jun-hee." Surprised, Jun-hee snapped, "You crazy guy, I have a boyfriend, I'm your senior. How dare you call me you informally?" Just then, Jun-hee's boyfriend arrived and held her hand tightly. He invited Nam Si-hyun to join the club, but Jun-hee pulled her boyfriend away for lunch. Nam Si-hyun walked into the university, heartbroken. Then, Oh Chan-dong approached him and introduced himself. He invited Nam Si-hyun to a group date with girls from the economics department. Nam Si-hyun initially declined, but after remembering the girls from the economics department, he agreed. During the date, he asked the three girls, "Do you know a senior named Han Jun-hee, also in the economics department?" Being new students, the girls didn't know who she was. Then, the waitress came to take their order. It turned out to be Jun-hee. After learning that the girls were on a group date with the guys, she became even more dismissive of Nam Si-hyun, despite his attempts to explain that it wasn't what she thought. Later, Nam Si-hyun waited outside, hoping to explain the situation to Jun-hee. When he saw her emerge, Si-hyun ran towards her, only to see her embracing her boyfriend. He stopped in his tracks. Nam Si-hyun returned to the cafe and told his uncle, "I never heard Han Jun-hee mention anything about her ex-boyfriend when I was preparing for the university entrance exam. I simply thought that if I saw Jun-hee again, she'd recognize me and we'd fall in love. I didn't expect it to be this difficult." His uncle replied, "Jun-hee doesn't know who you are yet. There will be a way for the two of you to get closer." Nam Si-hyun recalled what Jun-hee had once told him. "During college, Yeon-jun showed up everywhere I went, so gradually we developed feelings for each other." Now, Nam Si-hyun was overjoyed, having discovered a way to win Jun-hee over. So, Nam Si-hyun began ambushing Jun-hee wherever she went. Despite being in a different study abroad program, he appeared in the economics department lectures, much to Jun-hee's annoyance. Nam Si-hyun also got a part-time job at the restaurant where Jun-hee worked. Jun-hee asked him, Are you here because of me? Nam Si-hyun nodded in agreement. Jun-hee said, the work here is tough. Most people can't last more than a week. Let's see how long you can endure it. After that, Han Jun-hee worked him to the bone. But the young man remained cheerful and strived to do his job well. At this time, his uncle called the young man with the cane, informing him that everything was going according to plan. This young man was the real Nam Si-hyun. Due to the bus accident years ago, one of Nam Si-hyun's legs was no longer normal, and a year earlier, his close friend In Jae-woo had been released from prison. Nam Si-hyun, using his cane, went to pick up his childhood friend. Nam Si-hyun and In Jae-woo went home to see the latter's grandmother. In Jae-woo hugged his grandmother, sobbing and apologizing profusely. Nam Si-hyun told In Jae-woo, a few years ago, I was in a bus accident. When I woke up, I was like this. I got a job nearby, and I visit your grandmother sometimes. In Jae-woo said, I killed Min-ju? How can you be so calm talking to me? Nam Si-hyun replied, I believe you didn't kill Min-ju. I know you. You would never do that. In Jae-woo said, you saw it and you still don't believe me. Then, In Jae-woo stood up and went inside. The next day, In Jae-woo brought flowers to Min-ju's grave and reminisced about their beautiful memories together. Then, he left. Upon returning to his grandmother's rice cake shop, In Jae-woo found her collapsed on the floor. At the hospital, In Jae-woo questioned Nam Si-hyun. Why didn't you tell me my grandmother had a terminal illness? In Jae-woo's grandmother said, I was the one who stopped Si-hyun from telling you. I'm so happy to see your face one last time. In Jae-woo's grandmother passed away soon after. The two friends arranged her funeral. After the funeral, In Jae-woo told Nam Si-hyun, I'll go to Seoul to find a job. I have to live well so as not to disappoint my grandmother. The two friends had a cheerful night of drinking together. After getting drunk, In Jae-woo helped Nam Si-hyun to his room to rest. In Jae-woo stepped out, looked at his grandmother's portrait, and went somewhere. When Nam Si-hyun woke up, In Jae-woo was gone. Si-hyun remembered that Min-ju's uncle had mentioned that In Jae-woo had committed suicide shortly after his release from prison, and that was also where Min-ju had died. Nam Si-hyun immediately took a taxi to an abandoned building. After some effort, he managed to climb to the top. There, he saw In Jae-woo about to jump. Nam Si-hyun tried desperately to stop him, but In Jae-woo was determined to join Min-ju. Thus, the life of the top student in their class ended in tragedy. Back with Han Jun-hee in 27, she saw Koo Yeon-jun enthusiastically giving directions to an elderly woman and started to have a better impression of him. Then, Jun-hee's boyfriend introduced a new club member. It turned out to be Nam Si-hyun. Jun-hee was quite annoyed, but since the club was short of members, she had to accept this Yeon-jun guy. Nam Si-hyun sat down and stared intently at Jun-hee. She said, Yeon-jun, have you stared enough? Fill out the application form and stop staring at me like that. My boyfriend will get the wrong idea. Nam Si-hyun muttered. Then try being less beautiful. That evening, while working at the restaurant, a friend complained to Jun-hee about her friend who had just broken up with her boyfriend and was being dramatic. Jun-hee told her to check on her friend, but the waitress friend said, forget it. Nam Si-hyun overheard and said, your friend sent out a cry for help. If you don't go, you might lose her forever. Nam Si-hyun then went inside and remembered his uncle telling him that In Jae-woo had been pardoned and released from prison a year early, but he had taken his own life afterward. Nam Si-hyun now sobbed, filled with regret for not being there for his friend. Seeing this sensitive side of Yeon-jun, Han Jun-hee began to open up to him. She even told Nam Si-hyun, if you're feeling down, you can talk to me. The next day, the four of them were planning to celebrate Jun-hee's birthday that evening, but she received a call from the restaurant manager asking her to come in to work. Jun-hee declined to attend her own birthday party because of work. Nam Si-hyun told Jun-hee, Senior, go to your birthday party. I'll cover your shift at the restaurant. That night, Nam Si-hyun was working when he saw Jun-hee arrive. He went to ask her what happened, and Jun-hee said, my boyfriend stood me up, so there's no birthday party anymore. Nam Si-hyun saw Jun-hee having to sing and dance for other people's birthdays on her own birthday and came up with an idea. He rushed to the cake shop. Finding it closed, he pleaded with the owner to sell him a birthday cake. He then raced back to the restaurant, but the manager said Jun-hee had received a call from her boyfriend and left in a hurry. Jun-hee went to meet her boyfriend and found him with another girl. Her boyfriend said, "This is my ex-girlfriend. We broke up after a heated argument, but we realized we can't live without each other." Jun-hee said, "You cheated on me, didn't you?" She slapped him and yelled at the cheating couple. Jun-hee realized she had left her wallet at the restaurant and went back to get it. As she was walking, she received a call from Nam Si-hyun. He wished her a happy birthday, but when she entered the restaurant, she found him lighting candles on a birthday cake. Nam Si-hyun told Jun-hee to make a wish and blow out the candles before the day ended. After she made her wish, she asked Nam Si-hyun to make a wish too. He said, "My wish has already come true, because I wish to see you, Senior." Then he asked, "Senior, why did you agree to date him?" Jun-hee began to tell him her story. She said, "We volunteered at an orphanage. I saw how well he treated the children, and it reminded me of something from my past. When I was little, I had a crush on a boy. He bought me rice cake skewers and chased away the boys who were bullying me. I told him my name was Han Jun-hee and asked him to remember it. But I'm sure he didn't bother." Nam Si-hyun remembered the little girl, Han Jun-hee, from 1998. Jun-hee continued, "It was because of that boy from my childhood that I agreed to date the guy who just dumped me." Nam Si-hyun slammed the table and said, "So I set the table for that jerk to enjoy, didn't I?" After regaining his composure, Nam Si-hyun declared, "So, from now on, I can officially pursue you, Senior." But Jun-hee replied, "From now on, I'm not dating any men." Nam Si-hyun responded, "Then I won't date any other girls either, because I'm only going to date you, Senior. I'm serious." Jun-hee then stood up to leave. But before she left, Nam Si-hyun gave her a gift. On the bus, Jun-hee opened the gift to find a pair of earrings. The next day, while eating in the school cafeteria, Jun-hee asked her friend, "Why are all the girls staring at Yeon-jun?" Her friend replied, "Because they're crazy about him. Girls across campus are fighting over tickets just to talk to him." Jun-hee said, "No wonder he's always confessing his love to every girl." Her friend corrected her, "No way, Yeon-jun is friendly, but he's never flirted with anyone. That's why he's even more desirable, driving the girls wild." She continued, "You know the prettiest girl in our department? She confessed to Yeon-jun yesterday, but you know what he said? He said, 'I'm waiting for my destiny. I'll only love one person in this life, and it's not you.'" Jun-hee realized that her perception of Yeon-jun might have been wrong. As time passed, Nam Si-hyun continued to silently care for and support Jun-hee, causing her to gradually develop feelings for him. That evening, Nam Si-hyun waited for Jun-hee so they could go home together. He noticed she was wearing the earrings he had given her. Jun-hee became flustered and tried to explain. Then, she asked Nam Si-hyun to stop calling her senior since they were the same age. Overjoyed, Nam Si-hyun repeatedly called out, "Jun-hee." She also repeatedly called out, "Yeon-jun." The next day, Nam Si-hyun went to class and didn't see Jun-hee. Her friend said, "I've called her a dozen times, but she's not answering." Nam Si-hyun ran to Jun-hee's house. He knocked, but no one answered. He called her phone and heard it ringing inside. Then, he realized Jun-hee was sick and seemed to have fainted. He immediately called her friend to ask for the door code. Inside, he found Jun-hee unconscious on the floor. Nam Si-hyun rushed her to the hospital. Later, they rode the bus home together. On the bus, Jun-hee rested her head on Nam Si-hyun's shoulder. As they neared her home, Si-hyun said, "I'll wait until you get inside before I leave." Jun-hee walked away, then turned back and told Nam Si-hyun, "Do you know what today is? It's the day we started dating." Overjoyed, Nam Si-hyun hugged Jun-hee tightly. The new couple smiled and said goodbye. Nam Si-hyun skipped and danced as he walked away. The next day, while working together at the club, Nam Si-hyun noticed Jun-hee still had a cold. He put his jacket on her and went to get her some water. Jun-hee stayed behind, inhaling the scent of Yeon-jun's jacket. When he returned, she became embarrassed. Nam Si-hyun asked, "Do you like my scent that much?" Jun-hee tried to explain. They gazed into each other's eyes and leaned in for a kiss. Jun-hee said, "You'll catch my cold." Si-hyun replied, "Give me some." And they shared their first passionate kiss. Back in 2023, after hearing the entire story from the long-haired Nam Si-hyun, Jun-hee walked over and embraced him. The one who experienced all those sweet moments with Jun-hee was the one and only Nam Si-hyun from 1998. Even though he borrowed Yeon-jun's body, it was still the same Nam Si-hyun from the past. Jun-hee led Nam Si-hyun back to the place they once lived. "When I was in Jong-sun's body," Si-hyun told her, "I thought we would be happy forever, until that day came. After dating for a while, I was planning to propose, but you announced you were going to New York for work. I went to the airport to follow you." He then recounted the moment he boarded the fateful plane. Passport in hand, he was approached by a young man on crutches. Si-hyun realized this was himself after the bus accident. The long-haired man warned, "If you get on this flight, the accident will happen. Yeon-jun's body will be gone, and your soul will return to your real body, which has been in a coma since the bus accident in 2002. That's me. Take this ticket and go to New York on the next flight." Si-hyun, in Yeon-jun's body, replied, "If I don't get on this flight, Jun-hee won't be able to go back to 1998 to meet me. Fate is predetermined. I have to die to see Jun-hee again. If I don't board this plane, all my memories of her will be erased. I have to accept this fate so I can remember her." With that, Si-hyun, as Yeon-jun, boarded the plane. Immediately after the crash, his soul returned to his comatose body. He now remembered everything he had experienced from 1998 to 2023. He awoke to find his leg broken from the bus accident. Painstaking rehabilitation followed, but his leg remained weak, requiring him to use crutches. "I waited so long to see you," he told Jun-hee. "While I waited, I pieced together everything that happened from 1998 to 2023. Even knowing everything, I couldn't save Injayu." "So we just have to follow fate?" Jun-hee asked. Si-hyun looked at her. "I thought so too. Until last year, when I went to the airport to meet another version of Yeon-jun. I did everything I had been told to do when I was him. And Yeon-jun refused the ticket I offered, choosing to board the doomed plane so you could return to 1998. But then something unexpected happened. John Jazu gave me his phone, filled with memories of him and John Hill, and asked me to keep it safe. Yeon-jun also told me he was boarding the flight by choice. Jeonju also gave me this engagement ring and said, 'Give her happiness in my place.' After meeting that version of myself, I realized that my choices could change our destiny." Si-hyun then slipped the ring onto Jun-hee's finger. They shared a passionate kiss. Later, Si-hyun told Jun-hee, "Injayu confessed to killing Min-young. It doesn't make sense, something feels wrong." He continued, "I've been investigating, and it seems everything started after Min-ju's death. Honestly, I want to forget everything that happened and just be happy with you, but I can't." "I would do the same," Jun-hee replied. "I'd go back as many times as it takes. If I go back to 1998 now, what should I do?" "When you wake up in Min-ju's body," Si-hyun instructed, "you have to survive October 13th. Give Min-ju a chance to live." They lay down, exchanged engagement rings, and promised to be together forever. After Han Jun-hee returned from 1998, Jun-hee put on the headphones and started the cassette player. Si-hyun held her hand as she drifted off to sleep. But when she woke up and ran outside, Si-hyun, with his long hair, was still there. They embraced, renewed their promises to each other, and shared a joyful kiss. Afterwards, they visited Min-ju's uncle. All three were puzzled as to why Jun-hee hadn't traveled back to 1998 despite listening to the tape. Si-hyun went to their old school to see their former homeroom teacher. "Since Min-ju's murder in 1998, he asked, "has anything unusual happened at school? Any injuries or transfers?" When the teacher replied that nothing major had occurred since then, Si-hyun asked to check the school newspapers from 1998 in the library. The teacher suddenly remembered something unusual that happened after Minju's death. A student from another class had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital and placed in an isolated ward. "Do you remember the student's name?" Si-hyun asked. The teacher couldn't recall, so he checked the student records and found the name, Oh Chan-hui. Si-hyun recognized the face in the photo. The records showed that Chan-hui's younger brother, Chan-young, was Yeon-jun's college friend. At that moment, at Jun-hee's house, Chan-young arrived to visit her. He saw her reading news articles about the 1998 murder and, curious, read the entire article. "Why are you reading this?" he asked. Jun-hee honestly recounted her story of repeated time travel. "How do you go back to 1998? Chan-young inquired. Jun-hee showed him the cassette player and said, "I listened to a song on this. When I wake up, I'm back in 1998. "If there's someone exactly like you in 1998, Chan-young asked, "I just need to listen to this and I'll wake up in their body?" When Jun-hee nodded, he continued, "Why are you so interested in the two girls' murders in 1998? Jun-hee replied, "I think the same person killed both girls. Even though the police caught someone for Minju's murder, I think it was someone else. And that person also killed Da-hyun in 1998. Chan-young then said, "Jun-hee, make me a chilling cup of coffee." It turned out that Chan-young had harbored disturbing thoughts since childhood. When he saw pictures of Minju on his brother's desk, he'd asked, "Do you like her?" Chan-hui had replied, "She's shy like me, that's why I noticed her." Chan-young had suggested, "If you like her that much, turn her into a specimen. She'll be completely yours, like your butterfly collection. You should choose them when they're most beautiful and make them your own." Chan-hui had scolded him, "People aren't insects. If you like someone, you cherish them, not hurt them." Chan-young had simply replied, "Where's the fun in that?" Now, Chan-young received a call from Yeon-jun, but he immediately turned off his phone. Si-hyun called Minju's uncle and informed him, "I found Minju's killer. It's a student from her class. Since Minju's death, he's been in a psychiatric hospital, unable to commit any more crimes." Chan-young then put on the headphones and started the cassette player. When Jun-hee brought out the coffee, she called to him repeatedly. Chan-young woke up and said, "I just dozed off. I didn't time travel anywhere." Jun-hee then peeled some fruit for him. He came up behind her and said, "Thanks to you, I know what happened to me and my brother." He overpowered her, choking her until she lost consciousness. It turned out that when he put on the headphones and the music started, he had time traveled to 1998, inhabiting his brother's body. Minju then woke him. He remembered seeing Minju about to be hit by a car and his brother pushing her out of the way. Looking at a name tag, he realized he was in his brother's body. He pretended to take Minju home. Leading her to a secluded area, he began to strangle her. Minju threw sand in his eyes and ran. He chased her down and struck her head with a stick, knocking her unconscious. As he was about to finish her off, Jun-hee woke him up, pulling him back to 2023. After knocking Jun-hee out, he remembered the first time he saw her at the restaurant. He had mistaken her for Minju, whose picture he'd seen, but her confidence told him he was wrong. Just then, Si-hyun entered the house. Finding Jun-hee unconscious, he called for an ambulance. Chan-young emerged, pretending to be concerned and calling Si-hyun Yeon-jun. He claimed Jun-hee was already unconscious when he arrived, and he hid in the closet, fearing the attacker's return. Si-hyun spotted the cassette player in Chan-young's pocket. He grabbed him, saying, "It was you who killed Da-hyun and Minju, not your brother." Chan-young threw him off and stabbed him, but Si-hyun managed to deflect the blow. Si-hyun then punched him repeatedly, demanding, "Why did you kill those girls?" Chan-young grabbed the knife and declared, "I did it. I finally understand what my brother was talking about all those years ago." He stabbed Si-hyun again, adding, "All thanks to your girlfriend, Jun-hee. She's the reason I could go back to 1998. Nam Si-hyun collapsed. As the ambulance arrived, Chan-young grabbed Jun-hee's diary and fled. Si-hyun died, a single tear rolling down his cheek. Chan-young returned home and read Minju's diary. He then listened to the music again, traveling back to 1998, arriving at the moment he'd left. He intended to turn Minju into a specimen, but her injuries meant she wasn't perfect yet. He would wait until she healed. Then, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket, he dropped a hearing aid. His brother had found it earlier after In Jae dropped it, and he had left it there to frame him. Jun-hee and her uncle went to the morgue to see Si-hyun one last time. Jun-hee sobbed, devastated at losing him so soon after their reunion. "We have to find Chan-young," she told her uncle. "I have to get the cassette player back and save Si-hyun." Her uncle went to the police, who said they would check security cameras for Chan-young. They were puzzled why he took the cassette player and diary, as they seemed worthless. Jun-hee told her uncle, "I think Chan-young went back to 1998 last night, but I don't know whose body he woke up in. It had to be someone who looked just like him." Her uncle exclaimed, "His brother, Chan-hyui." Jun-hee looked at Chan-hyui's picture. He looked remarkably like Chan-young. At that moment, Chan-young, in Chan-hyui's body, was walking home. His mother greeted him, saying, "Chan-hyui, your brother just killed the dog, and he's acting like nothing happened. He gives me the chills." He then entered the room to talk to his younger brother, his past self. He began to instill twisted thoughts into the young boy's mind. He said, "You're right about some things, Chan-young. If you like something, you have to turn it into a specimen and keep it for yourself. You and I are both very special. Let me tell you a secret, I'm actually you from the future. You won't understand now, but a long time from now, you'll understand what I'm saying. But from now on, don't let anyone see how special you are. You have to act meek and inconspicuous as much as possible, so others won't be wary of your abilities. If I go specimen collecting next time, I'll take you with me." That evening, Chan-young led his younger self to the classroom where the female student, Da-hyun, was bound and gagged. Chan-young then put a chloroform-soaked rag over Da-hyun's mouth. The younger brother just stood there, trembling. Jun-hee and her uncle went to the mental hospital to meet Chan-young's older brother, Chan-hyui. Jun-hee asked, "In 1998, a high school girl named Min-ju was murdered. Do you know who the killer is?" He just tapped his fingers and remained silent. But then he said, "I heard and saw everything, but I could only stand there and watch. I couldn't do anything." Jun-hee pressed him. "So, was it your younger brother who did it?" He looked directly at Jun-hee and called out, "Kwon Min-ju." "How could he?" He started to panic and said, "It wasn't me, Min-ju. They made me do it. I didn't want to." Jun-hee and her uncle left, certain that the one who killed Min-ju was the younger brother. Chan-hyui had witnessed his brother's actions, which drove him insane. But she wondered, who are they? Regardless, they had to catch him immediately and find the cassette player so Si-hyun could live again. Jun-hee then received a call from the police. They went to the police station. The police said they had caught Chan-young hiding in a motel. When Jun-hee asked for the cassette player back, the police said it was no longer intact. When they stormed into the room and woke Chan-young, he opened his eyes, attacked the officers, and then smashed the cassette player. As the police subdued him, he muttered, "Why now?" Jun-hee held the broken cassette player in her hand. Seeing Chan-young being led away by the police, she immediately yelled at him, "You're a murderer, give me back Si-hyun," he replied. "No, the real killer of Min-ju isn't me, it's you." Jun-hee took the broken cassette player to numerous electronics stores hoping someone could fix it. After visiting many shops, an older man finally agreed to repair it. After the repair, Jun-hee inserted the batteries and pressed the play button repeatedly, but the device wouldn't work. Jun-hee burst into tears, remembering Nam Si-hyun's last moments. Then, she pressed the button again, and the cassette player finally started working. Jun-hee returned to 1998. Arriving at the same moment she had left, but a few minutes earlier. Seeing Si-hyun enter, offering her a drink, Jun-hee burst into tears and hugged him tightly. Later, walking home with Si-hyun, Jun-hee hugged him again, holding him close. When they arrived at Jun-hee's house, Si-hyun asked, "Back at my place, why were you like that?" Jun-hee replied, "I briefly went back to 2023. I suddenly missed you so much, that's why I cried." Si-hyun said, "Starting tomorrow, I'll walk you to and from school. I'm afraid of what the killer might do to you." They said goodbye. Jun-hee went inside and, looking in the mirror, saw that her eyes and face had changed. This was the real Min-ju. The Jun-hee from 2023 was trapped within the subconscious of the 1998 Min-ju. In this time travel, Jun-hee was imprisoned in a dark room. Si-hyun drove home, sensing something strange about Jun-hee, a stark difference from her usual confident and decisive demeanor. The next morning, Minju woke up, looked in the mirror, and realized she was still herself, not replaced by anyone. She began practicing facial expressions to mimic Jun-hee perfectly. Later, Si-hyun drove Minju to school. In the car, she hugged him tightly. At school, her homeroom teacher asked her to go to the counseling office to meet with the police. When the officer repeatedly questioned her about Da-hyun's death, Minju stammered and hesitated, eventually murmuring, "I don't know anything," with her head down. The officer stepped outside and said to Minju, "You seem very different today compared to when I met you at the police station. You were so outspoken then. Are you okay? If you're having any difficulties, please tell me." Minju simply replied, "It's nothing," and walked away. In the restroom, Minju composed herself, striving to project Jun-hee's confidence. She also spoke to Jun-hee, who was within her consciousness. "I was in that room, practicing thousands of times to imitate you perfectly," Minju told her. Jun-hee warned, "Chan-young is in his brother's body. He's going to kill you and Si-hyun. You have to tell Si-hyun." Minju ignored her and left the restroom. Outside, she ran into Si-hyun and In-jae. "The police suspect the person who killed Da-hyun and attacked me is the same," she announced. "They said I'm in great danger." Si-hyun promised, "I'll drive you everywhere to protect you." Minju beamed at his words. As she walked away, she encountered Chan-young. He looked into her eyes and seemed to recognize something. Si-hyun went to the video store to take Minju home and gave her a pager. As Si-hyun left, Minju ran after him and kissed him on the cheek, then shyly retreated inside. Si-hyun chuckled in surprise. Back in her room, Minju wrote in her diary about everything Si-hyun had done for her. When she heard Jun-hee ask, "Why haven't I read this in the diary before?" Minju ripped out the page and wrote instead, "He's meant for Jun-hee." "Are you writing this for me to read?" Jun-hee asked. Minju replied, "Didn't you return to 1998 after seeing this sentence? Only when you go back will Nam Si-hyun continue to like me. Everything is going according to my plan. As long as Si-hyun keeps caring for me like this, I'm willing to pretend to be you for the rest of my life." Jun-hee warned her again, "You can do whatever you want, but Minju, on October 13th, Chan-young will kill you. That night, stay inside. Absolutely do not go out. Tell Si-hyun and In-jae about this." Minju confidently retorted, "I won't go down that easily." One day, as Minju and Si-hyun left a photo booth, it started to rain. Si-hyun, walking behind Minju, noticed the image of Jun-hee cheerfully running in the rain had vanished. The next day, when Minju invited the two boys to a movie, Si-hyun declined, saying he was busy renting comics. "You two have fun at the movie," he said. In class, In-jae asked Si-hyun, "Why are you avoiding Minju?" Si-hyun replied, "Minju has been acting strange lately. Before, she was determined to catch the culprit, but now she only wants to hang out. She doesn't seem like the same person who claimed to be Han Jun-hee. Now she's like Minju before the accident. It's as if she's trying to imitate Han Jun-hee externally." Overhearing their conversation, Minju was shocked and walked away, trembling. Chan-young, observing from afar, realized that Minju was back. Si-hyun returned home and compared Minju's handwriting as Jun-hee with her current handwriting on the videotape case. They were completely different. Chan-young arrived at the video store looking for a specific tape. After browsing for a while, he selected the very tape used for time travel. He then looked directly at the girl and said, "It's you, Minju. I've been waiting for you to come back for a long time." Minju trembled all over. As she closed up the video store to leave, she nervously scanned her surroundings. Chan-young was secretly following her. Realizing she was being tailed, Minju ran, then bumped into Si-hyun. She hugged him tightly and said, "I thought you weren't coming." Si-hyun took Minju back to his place. Seeing the familiar table where they often talked, Si-hyun asked, "Do you remember the first time we came here?" Minju replied, "Of course. That's when you told me the secret about you going to America." Si-hyun responded, "The first time I met Jun-hee here, I didn't mention going to America. She told me about her dream. Tell me the truth, you're not Jun-hee, are you?" Minju stammered, "I am Jun-hee. When I entered Minju's body, all of my memories and hers merged, so I got a little confused." Si-hyun pulled out a photo of the three of them and said, The writing on the back is Junhee's. I compared it to yours, and they're completely different. Junhee now urged Minju, tell Sehyun that Junhee is inside his brother's body. But Minju just clutched her head. Then, Minju said to Sehyun, if I admit I'm Minju, will you still care about me, worry about me, and smile at me? Sehyun then asked Minju, can Junhee come back? If she can't, what do I have to do to see her again? Minju replied, I made it all up. I created a Junhee just the way you liked her. I was just pretending to be her. Even the guy, Yeon-young, I made him up too. So even if I die now, you'll never see Junhee again. The next morning, Minju listlessly went to class. Sehyun wasn't there. The other girls in the class remarked, you look like the old Minju again. Don't go back to the way you were. We like you better after you changed. Sehyun arrived at class very late. In-jae sensed something had happened between Minju and Sehyun. Minju continued to practice looking like Junhee in the mirror. She went out to greet Sehyun, but he acted indifferent and said, Minju, from now on, don't look at me with Junhee's expression. Then he turned and walked away. In-jae went looking for Minju and found her on the rooftop. Minju walked closer to the edge, looking down. Junhee desperately tried to stop her from doing anything rash, saying, I'm sorry. Minju replied, you have nothing to be sorry for. I should be thanking you. Thanks to you taking over my body, everyone likes me, you know. Today is October 13th, 1998. If I get killed, people won't easily forget me. Junhee remembered Chan-young's words, the one who really killed Minju is you. Minju continued, if I'm killed, it'll be a shocking case, and the TV and newspapers will report on it. Murder victims are always spoken of well and mourned by many. Later, they went to an abandoned house. Chan-young told Minju, I'll preserve your most beautiful moment. Instead of living a meaningless life, you can stop at the best part. He then took out a syringe and said, it might hurt a little, but it will be over quickly. Minju closed her eyes. Chan-young started to remove the syringe cap. Just as he was about to inject Minju's neck, he was jolted awake by the police from 2023. He had to return and give his body back to his older brother. His brother, Chan Hui, woke up and shook his head repeatedly. Minju forced him to inject her. Chan Hui then threw the syringe away and ran out. Minju, now resolute, decided to take matters into her own hands. She picked up a shard of glass to look at herself one last time, then walked towards the edge of the roof. Junhee desperately tried to stop her, taking all the blame upon herself. Minju said, Junhee, I don't hate you. I just hate myself. Just then, In-jae arrived. Minju handed him a shard of glass and said, Brazil, please kill me. If I'm not killed, I'll go back to my miserable life. Junhee pleaded with her, promising to restore her normal life. Minju retorted, how could you understand how I feel? You can make friends without even trying. Sehyun is head over heels for you. You have no idea what I've been through. In-jae spoke up. I understand what you're going through. I really like you, Minju. Give me a chance, and you'll see how much I like you. As he approached, Minju held the glass shard to her neck, saying, I like you for who you are. You're precious to me. Minju continued to back away, eventually slipping from his grasp. After Minju stopped breathing, Junhee returned to 2023. She wanted to time travel again, but the cassette player no longer worked. In-jae went downstairs, cradling Minju, wanting to make her death appear as a murder, fulfilling her wish. He told Sehyun that he had killed Minju. In-jae then willingly went with the police, confessing to the crime. Junhee went to her uncle, sobbing uncontrollably because she couldn't save Minju. Sehyun also visited the repairman, who said, I fixed it, but it's beyond repair. The tape is still intact, though. Junhee drove to a secluded spot, put on the headphones, and repeatedly pressed play, but nothing happened. She prayed to Sehyun, let me go back to you one more time. Then, a miracle happened. The cassette player suddenly started working, and just as Minju was about to fall, In-jae caught her. She hugged him, saying, thank you for saving Min-young. It turned out that Minju was now Junhee. Sehyun ran to them, recognizing the look in her eyes as his Han Junhee. Junhee told them, the time traveler has returned to 2023, so no one will harm Minju anymore. In-jae asked, Then where is the real Minju? Junhee replied. She's in a safe place, and she'll come back when I've finished a few things. Because Minju is alive, the future has changed. Sihyun asked. So we won't meet in college. You won't come back here, and we won't know each other. Junhee remained silent. Junhee ran to Minju's uncle, who said, Everyone's been looking for you everywhere. Junhee replied, Everything's been resolved, thanks to your help. She hugged him joyfully. He was confused by her words. Back home, Junhee looked in the mirror to talk to Minju. She said softly, I know if you come back to this body, you might want to give up on this world again. I know you tried so hard during the time I lived as Kwon Minju. I now understand why you wanted to give up on everything. It's because you had too many expectations for this world. Only now do I understand you a little. Minju's uncle returned to the video store to find her resignation letter. She urged him to learn how to make coffee, predicting he'd own a cafe someday. The competition will be fierce, she wrote. You'll need to be tough to survive. If you don't believe me, you'll regret it later. Junhee gave In-jae the cassette tape and the time travel tape, asking him to destroy them. If I destroy them, you'll never be able to return to 1998, In-jae said. Sihyun won't be okay if he can't see you again. Junhee replied, If the cassette player is gone, Nam Sihyun won't remember me, and everything will go back to the way it was. I'm not allowed to interfere in Minju's life anymore, so please destroy them. Junhee then met Sihyun. Holding hands, they took a train to the beach. There, they played joyfully in the sand and walked through a beautiful field of flowers, watching the sunset. Sihyun asked, Is today the last day we'll be together? Knowing you, I'm sure you'll destroy those tapes and the cassette player. What am I supposed to do when I miss you unbearably? Junhee responded, We're not over. If you're the Sihyun I know, you'll definitely find me. They embraced. Sihyun promised, I will find you. We will meet again. They shared a kiss. In-jae went to the place where Minju had once contemplated ending her life. He destroyed the time travel tape and then burned the cassette player and the remaining tape. Both Junhee and Nam Sihyun dissolved into nothingness. Junhee returned to 2023. She checked all the photos she had taken with Yeonjun, but his image was gone. Sihyun also returned home, and everything related to Junhee began to vanish. He looked for the drawing he had made of Han Junhee, but it faded away from his computer screen. He no longer remembered her. Back in her own time, Junhee watched as everything related to Yeonjun disappeared, including their engagement photos. Then, she began to fade, and all her memories of Nam Sihyun and Yeonjun vanished. Minju returned to her own body in the hospital. She woke up to find In-jae slumped beside her bed. This was the moment immediately after her accident, and the story of Junhee inhabiting her body in 1998 had never happened. After being discharged, Minju told In-jae at school, I had a strange dream in the hospital. I met a different version of myself. She told me that I was exhausting myself by expecting too much from life. I cried a lot when I heard those words, but when I woke up, I felt incredibly relieved. I hadn't been paying attention to my surroundings, so I didn't know who cared about me. In-jae asked, So, do you know who cares about you now? Minju replied, I see it clearly now. Time passed, and by 2011, Sihyun had become the director of a webcomic company. One snowy evening, he decided to go outside to watch the snowfall. He boarded a bus. As it started moving, a girl ran after it and asked the driver to let her on. The bus was playing the same music that had been on the time travel tape. Sihyun noticed the girl humming along to the song. It was Junhee. Junhee turned and saw the stranger looking at her. They both felt a pang of shyness. Sihyun looked at her and said, Kwon Minju, realizing it was just someone who resembled her. Junhee got off the bus. After a short distance, Sihyun got off too. He ran after Junhee and called out to her. They turned to face each other, feeling a spark ignite between them. Sihyun's promise, I will find you, had finally been fulfilled.